Honestly, this is what I wanted. I want you to know that I'm here to anything I can help you with. You can reach me. It's my first name dot last name at gmail.com. So naveen.jain at gmail.com. Send me an email. I read every single email. Don't ask me for funding. That's not something I ever do. But I'm happy to help, and I don't need anything in return. So, ma'am.
Awesome. We have a question right. We have a question right here. Let's go up to the thank you.
So I feel like I want to cry, like with what you're talking about.
It's okay to cry.
It is good to cry. You know, I went to doctors for like 10 years, over 10 years, and there were times that like I woke up and my leg was numb and I had to crawl to the kitchen to eat the right thing. And I lived with so much fear. And then I had to become my own doctor. And I would go to doctors and they'd say like, oh, it's a food sensitivity. And I was like, well, fucking help me.
Yeah.
Right? And I came to the same conclusion of food is medicine. Yeah. And so just, I want to say thank you because of the work that you're doing. Like I see my friends, like we have an AI company and blah, blah, blah. We're doing all this work. And I see my friends who are working in just like working for antibiotics. And I'm like, no, the solution is food. If we only understood that it's fucking food, that's going to make us better. So a few questions that I have for you are...
First of all, virtual hug from me.
Thank you. Thank you. Have you found, just so many questions, but I'm gonna have two main ones. Have you found any patterns within families? Is the microbiome between siblings and parents, have you found similarities where it's like a 20% variance versus me and my friend, it's like a bigger variance? So that's one question. And then the other question is sugar. We understand the harm that sugar is causing on our brain, on our microbiome. Can you speak to sugar? And then the last question that I have is just, have you also, so sugar is on the bad side. Have you seen any patterns for the general population on what's good for everyone? Is there anything that's good across the board? Is it, you know, we've heard greens, just like eat greens, and it sounds like that might not be the answer. So those three.
Okay. What was the first question? Family. Yes. Local, yeah. So interestingly, the skin microbiome tends to get more similar with the people who live together. Especially the last research that I saw was when you look at the skin microbiome, especially on the feet, they tend to get very similar between the people who live together. Right? In the gut microbiome, we in fact found that even the people who were absolutely twins, their microbiome were completely different because our microbiome is influenced by everything, right? So the places we go visit, the air we inhale, the food we eat, and the places we touch, the hands we shake, everything changes our microbiome because we touch things, it changes our microbiome. We eat food that anything we touch to even lift the food, that changes our microbiome because. No. So your sister and you probably would have little bit more similarity there between you and someone say living in India. Right? Because they're completely different foods they're eating. So the similar types of, if you grew up in a similar environment, you literally were conjoined and you literally went to the same places, ate the same food, came from mom's microbiome. Mom ate exactly the same food all her life and did not change her food. You know what I'm saying? So many things changes because your initial microbiome is seeded by what mom ate, the mom's microbiome. That's a snapshot of what mom was eating during your pregnancy versus her pregnancy, right? So all the things are so different that it's very difficult for them to be. And one of the interesting thing is there is no such thing as a healthy microbiome. That's one unique healthy microbiome. That means think of your microbiome as a rainforest. Every step you take in the rainforest is completely different ecosystem, yet everything is lush and green. That means you can have gazillions great ecosystem. And what people used to think about was the good bacteria and the bad bacteria. That was an old philosophy. It is about a good ecosystem or a bad ecosystem. This is literally they all work together. Let me just give you just tiny bit more on that. Every one of us is very likely we have E. coli in our gut, we have C. diff in our gut. And those are really interesting, we need them. But all other stuff keeps them in check. What happens is when we have C. diff and we end up taking antibiotics and we throw the nuclear bomb inside our body, it kills a whole bunch of that stuff, and the C. diff being more resistant, it takes over. And then suddenly we have all the problems, or E. coli. But we need them to keep our immune system pumped up. You need to prime the pump. So if these organisms are not constantly priming our immune system, next time the pathogen comes, the immune system says, hey, whatever. So these guys are there to essentially keep the immune system ready to go. So you need this whole ecosystem that is good or bad, producing the right set of nutrients and not producing enough of the thing that are actually causing the gut lining to shed. The biggest problem we face right now is, the way our food is processed and the way our food is grown. So all the stuff that you probably saw, the glyphosate, did you guys see it? Monsanto just lost $253 million to just single person because they showed that how the weed killer, the glyphosate thing, is causing the gut microbiome to completely decimate, and they sued them and they won $253 million, and there are a million more lawsuits coming now, right? Thank God, because somebody's got to stop these kind of things, right? So other things, so my point is that our food causes the gut microbiome to change, antibiotics. So don't think of good or bad bacteria, think of the bacteria being actually as an ecosystem healthy. And there is not one healthy state, there can be multiple healthy states, because we can have different organisms producing nutrients that our body needs. Second question you asked me was, so in general, sugar is bad for everyone. There is no one can, it's needed, so don't get me wrong. Without sugar is the easiest thing for our energy to be produced.
So wait, it is universal though that sugar is generally...
No.
No, it's not.
My point is, anything you eat eventually is going to get converted into sugar because our brain needs sugar, right? So you eat carbs, it's going to go back and convert into the glucose. So my point is, additional sugar is something that is just too much sugar is bad for you. But it's not that you don't stop, because you can't eat anything. I mean, carbohydrates are basically sugar, right? So anything you eat, broccoli is carbohydrate, it has sugar. So there is nothing you can eat that doesn't have, right? So my point is not that you can avoid. Excess sugar is bad for everyone because it just causes additional insulin. Additional insulin basically makes you the insulin resistance that causes more inflammation and blah, 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 right?
Nice, so we have
And the third question was, is there anything that's generally good for everyone? And the answer is, if you're going to simply follow general guidelines, all I can say is there is no such thing as universal healthy food. However, if you're going to do anything and not going to do any tests, anything, the more colors you can eat, more diversity of food you can eat, that means eat as many different types of food as you can. Eat more seasonal stuff as in the season, don't eat the stuff that's out of season. I mean, those are generally the good rules to follow, but then again, it could be the stuff, spinach or any of the stuff could be harming you, like almonds. Who would have thought the almonds would be bad for you, right? I can tell you that for me, the biggest change for me came from initially the first time when I did the test, the things that are bad for me was spinach, avocado, and oats. And when I changed my diet, after 6 months, I can eat spinach, avocado, and oats. And the three bad things for me were almonds and dairy. And soya. Because I started eating, guess what happened? When I cut down all that stuff, what was I eating? A lot of tofu. Right? A lot of the stuff that I was eating. Now those things I was feeding, those organisms became so much, suddenly the ecosystem bad again. Now I need to cut down on dairy, almonds, and soya. Because soya has not just estrogen, it has something that produces TMA. Your microorganisms take that stuff and convert them into TMA, trimethyl acetylene. And when you go, that TMA gets absorbed in the body, and your liver converts them into TMAO, which causes the heart disease. So I had massive amount of TMA, and normally the TMA comes from carnitine. So if you're eating red meat, And I'm a vegetarian, and I could not figure out why I have such high TMA until we realized I was eating so much tofu. And that's where the TMA was coming from.
And you need to get this every couple of months then?
So the idea is when you are sick or when you're trying to recover from something, it is good to check every 3 or 4 months because your body is constantly changing. And once you get to a good spot, maybe you can check every 6 months. And when you get to a really good spot, maybe you can do once a year. But it's like a car. I mean, car is not even complex and you still have to tune it every year. And if you don't tune your car, you end up in a repair shop, which for the humans call emergency room.
We had a question back here. Yeah, still a question.
So first of all, thank you so much, Naveen. This is an amazing talk, very enlightening. So just as a marketer, my question for you is, everything you're saying makes so much sense. Why doesn't everyone know this? Is it a disbelief or is it just not enough people saying the right things?
Yeah. So many things. First of all, no one has incentive to say that, right? The people know about drugs because they spend billions of dollars in advertising the drugs on television. You know, take this drug and you're wonderful. And then they spend 2 minutes telling you about you're going to become important, blah, 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 blah. And then nobody hears that, right? And then suddenly, happy family, look at this, right? And they, you know, so no one has incentive to propagate food because no one makes money from it. The good thing is I could have spent a lot of money in marketing this. Then the cost of that would be substantially higher. So we spend zero money in marketing. So we can keep the cost as low as possible. I want to bring this cost down to under $100. And I really believe in the next couple of years I could do that. So we brought them from $1,000 to $399 now to $299. And I'm hoping in the next 3 to 4 months, I'll bring it down to $199. And I want to really bring it down to under $100 within the year, 12 months to 18 months. And that will happen. And it happens 2 reasons. The volume makes the things happen. Second thing is exponential technologies. Everything that I need is on an exponential curve. Sequencing cost is going to come down. The Amazon cost is going to come down. And sometimes I just beg. I went to Amazon and said, please help me. I can't afford to pay you $40 per person analyzing the data. So sometimes they say, okay, fine, we'll give you a discount. And the same thing, I went to Amazon. I said, I can't sell this thing. I don't know how to market it. Would you buy it from me and sell it? And now we're going to be actually, they never do that. But I got them excited about the mission we are on. And I'm just telling you, this is a fact. I asked the guys, I say, imagine, what Jeff Bezos' legacy will be as the richest man in the world, or his legacy going to be that he helped me solve the chronic disease problems, right? And now we are hopeful that we're going to become a vendor to Amazon where we don't have to sell, they're going to sell it for us. So point is, we are great scientists, but we are really shitty marketeers. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, we don't know how to buy Facebook ads. We don't even know how to go do these things. If we were really good at it, we'll be selling this, snake oil like other people do.
Thank you.
So please help me if you're good at it. Yes, do one here, there.
Thank you so much. I really liked the idea of talking to people about the world that I imagine. And one day I imagine that I'm going to be sitting in a seat like yours, and someone is going to be looking up to me for hopefully things that I've done in the future. And when someone asks me, how I dealt with all the adversity that I'm dealing with now, I'm wondering if you have some advice that I could tell the next person.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, so the adversity comes in many shapes and sizes. So first of all, I never get anxious or stressed. It doesn't matter what is happening around me. And 2 reasons for that. I don't worry about the things that I can't control. It's not in my control, I don't worry about it. And I never worry about the things that are in my control because I know I'm doing the best I possibly can. And that's really the things. So coming from the Eastern philosophy, my belief really is I don't focus on the outcome. I focus on the actions I take. And in Gita, it talks about all I have to do is to take the action and outcome will be what will be. And that is really the best way of dealing with adversity, is to say, I can't change the world around me. Only thing I can change is how I react to it, right? So happiness is a choice. Happiness is not something that someone gives you. It's a choice you make every day. When you get up in the morning, you can have 10 reasons why you should be happy. And you can come up with the 10 reasons why your life really sucks. It doesn't matter who you are. And you can make that choice any day. Happiness has to be something that is inherent in you. If you are an unhappy person, you can go to the most beautiful place in the world. You bring unhappiness with you, you'll still be unhappy. When you're a happy person, you could be sitting in a dark corner and still the happiness is with you. No one can make you happy. The problem that happens is we always say, oh, my girlfriend makes me happy, my spouse makes me happy. The fact is that they make you happy, you're given the remote control of your happiness to them. They're happy, unhappy, happy, unhappy. When you are happy inside, you share that happiness with everyone, but they don't control your happiness. And that's where you need to be. Learn to fall in love with yourself. Every woman, I actually suggest that most girls have hardest time with this. Fall in love with yourself. And I don't mean being self-conceited. Simply don't look for approval from anyone else. The self-love is the biggest thing you can give yourself. Don't require someone's approval. Don't care what anyone thinks. Do the things that you believe are right, what you want, what you love. And if someone disapproves of it, just look at them and say, your life, you live your life, I live my life. And it's amazing, amazing things happen when you do that. You got to be who you are, and you got to fall in love with who you are.
Let's go over here first, right here. Yeah, get our hand up.
And Naveen, I've been following you for quite some time now, and I've heard your podcast on Tom Bilyeu and School of Greatness. And so I think my question is, you've, I think, educated all of us here on the supply chain of rocket scientists using GoPros in microbiomes and all these things. How do you manage to moonshot in all these areas? Is it you dedicating like a period of few years in each of these areas? Do you dedicate, how do you spend your days? Like how do you break up your week? How does your day look like? And how can we aim to moonshot in these different areas?
So the couple of questions, I'm going to give a very specific answer to them for exactly what. Generally, the wrong question to ask is, most people tend to say, hey, tell me what are your habits? What do you do? And to me, that's really what I would say is, a stupid question to ask. It's probably that's what I say. And here's why. You never want to know someone's habits. You want to know their mindset. And here's why. Tony Robbins take ice bath every day. You can take an ice bath 3 times a day and you're not going to become Tony Robbins ever. You're going to become Tony Robbins by thinking like Tony Robbins. So I'm going to come back and answer your question. So what I do is every time I want to start a company in any industry, I don't spend years. What I do is I read about at least a dozen books on that subject. And here's why. If I only read one book, the author's view becomes my view. When I read 15 books, I get 15 different point of views, and my point of view added to that becomes completely unique because I'm able to synthesize all things and they're all looking at the trees, and by looking at the 15 trees I can able to look at the whole forest. Then one thing I specifically do is in each one of the industry I go to my Twitter feed and I set up a feed only for just that industry. So if you look at my news feed for today, it will be about every single research that comes out of a microbiome. In the morning I get up at 4 a.m. and the first 2 to 3 hours I read everything. And then I have a news feed that's about every single science stuff in every industry that is happening. So I spend 2 hours in specific and then 1 hour across because that allows me to keep collecting the dots When I keep collecting the dots, sometime I see the missing dot, I say, aha, now I can solve the problem. The fact I was reading that says the bacteria have autofluorescence, so when this guy is telling me about Hubble telescope and how they're able to detect the smallest, faintest light, I'm thinking, bacteria, right? And that would have never happened unless I was reading all the different stuff. So I'm able to apply the knowledge from the nanotech, apply that to and see how that would change what I'm doing here, right? Was there any other question there?
I think it was mostly around how do you get deep. I think a lot of people have surface level knowledge, and it could be by reading a book or two. Like how, and I think that's the question: is how do you get deep?
So one thing I would suggest to everyone here, to get you can never go deep in something unless you have a foundational knowledge of various subjects, because then the deep thing starts to make sense, right? So to me, the biggest change that came to me was when I started to learn I went to Singularity University and really understood the foundational knowledge of every single subject. So when I read a scientific journal, I may not get a lot out of it, but I kind of understand what is going on. And that is what allows me to say, okay, I don't understand what this TMA thing is, but there is something going on here that is similar to what I thought was metabolite. And I'm going to go, next time I read something, I say, oh, I read about the TMA thing. Now I understand what is going on. Right? And that's really is to get the broad foundational knowledge. And there are two things you can do. Go to YouTube and go look for the Singularity University things, and then you go watch a bunch of videos. Other thing is go to TED Talks and watch a bunch of videos. And this really is what I actually end up getting the broad knowledge. And then each subject, I go read bunch of books. So there were 3 years I spent just reading about cancer. I spent 2 years just reading about books on neuroscience. Then I read the books just on genetics. And it's just because I'm curious. And that's really what I do. I just go and say, there was one time I had, several dozen books just sitting on neuroscience. And I'm just a crazy guy. I can never read Kindle, so I buy physical books. And another good thing, I used to buy physical books. All my children used to laugh at me and say, Dad, someday you're going to start reading them on the things. What I realized was, when I buy the physical book, I leave them on the table. And I always see when I come home, some kid is reading it. And I never told them why I do that. I kept telling, because if I was on a Kindle, they would never read it. But the fact they were sitting there, somebody will always pick it up and read it. And that was my motive.
You made this really profound point just about having so many different perspectives. Most of the time we get locked into one or two or even just 3 perspectives on some issue. But with that multidisciplinary approach and with having so many different perspectives, I think that really, really makes really strong character in people. Let's go right here.
Hi, Naveen. You said something earlier that really resonated with me, which was we're trained from a very young age to become specialists or have depth in a particular field. And I've personally, what you said resonated with me because I've learned that it's breadth that gives you the upper hand or the advantage versus depth these days. And it's that ability to connect dots between domains.
Yep.
Because people are tapping domains out. You get diminishing marginal utility in domains. And so when you can intersect, it's like food. You bring 2 new ingredients together, you get a brand new food. So I really believe in that. And the other thing you said was, one of the inspirations for Viome was your father. And one of the inspirations for my company, which I was telling you a little bit about earlier, was my mother. She was diagnosed with stage 4B cancer.
Oh, God.
And it was abrupt. And it was, this is the healthcare system we live in. It's you're fine, you're fine, you're fine, you're fine, then binary, you're stage 4B cancer. And so my point is that anyone who's been through cancer, has been a caregiver in cancer, one of the things they do during treatment at each chemo, if it's IV chemotherapy, standard of care, is they check your blood count before each chemo to make sure you can handle it. And my uncle from London had come, and gave her this very strict dietary regimen. And you would think with each successive chemo, you know, her chemo would drop and they'd have to give her some stimulants for that, for her blood count. She was getting healthier during chemo, which is really strange. And I really believe it was because of the diet, not the drugs. Sure. And so just a testament to what you were saying is that, you know, I've lost faith, any faith that I had left in pharma, that sometimes the old way of natural foods and the right type of food can be way more efficacious than all this complex science.
Let's go over here, yeah. Let's go to the left, yeah, and then we'll come back to the middle.
Hey, thank you for being here tonight. And I love how you talk about finding the root cause. So my question for you is from a personal angle and caring about our entire world. I'm like a startup founder grinding really hard, no money, would love to afford Viome if I could afford it, but I don't have the money for it. So what do you think?
Send me, I'm happy to give it to you. I mean, seriously, if you can't afford it, it's on me.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
What do you think is the root cause of poverty or not having enough money?
Sure. So, I mean, there are a lot of things. I mean, to me, the poverty is simply a symptom. It's not a disease. And it comes from many things. One is really the idea of family structure and I would say education. So to large extent, you look at the stuff that I grew up in the poverty. And the only reason I'm not there is because my mother believed that we can break the cycle. And the only way we broke the cycle was through education. So even though I did not for the longest time knew my mother was illiterate, I remember that when I was small, she will wake me up at 5 a.m. and she will say, she will point on the thing and say, tell me the answer to that problem. And I would say, Mom, the answer is 9. And she would say, don't make me look, do it again. And I would go do it again. And I did not realize that she couldn't even read. But she cared. She cared. So there was a family structure. And she cared and she gave me the education. And that was the cycle out of the poverty, right? So one thing is a family that cares. 90% of the time, the reason people stay in poverty is because they have broken families. The parents are divorced. No one cares what is going on. No one gives love. To me, one of the things we did was, it was hard, you know, coming from poverty is easy. Our children grew up in very affluent family. How did we give them the values? It was very interesting, you will see. So just if I could just brag. Most of you can Google, my oldest son is now 28. And if you Google, his name is Ankur, A-N-K-U-R. If you just Google him, he was 17 when he started Kairos Society, K-A-I-R-O-S, and he's world's largest college entrepreneurship thing. He started a company when he graduated from Wharton, sold the company, and now he's focused on helping young entrepreneurs to solve real-world problems, affordable housing, senior care. 28-year-old. Our daughter graduated from Stanford. She's a Stanford Mayfield Fellow, Stanford STEM Fellow. She's the board of Stanford Women in Business. And all she wanted to do was solve the problem of gender equality. She's running a company at Pymetrics, which essentially uses AI to remove the gender bias in hiring. Our youngest one is a senior at Stanford. The fact is, what is it that they did? What we did? They didn't have to work. They knew they had plenty of money they could spend. And they are all driven. They work. If you look at Ankur, just watch. He's on CNBC at least once a week. He's on Wall Street Journal, full page. If you pick up the Entrepreneur magazine this month, he has 6-page spread on it, right? I mean, he's everywhere. Because from the young days, we told them that our love for you is unconditional. You never have to worry about do we love you, but our approval is not. And that was the difference. That approval you have to earn every day, but you love you never have to. That means I will never tell you I'm proud of you unless you do something that makes us proud. But we'll always tell you we love you. And one of the rules that I always followed, and I've never broken, it doesn't matter what I am doing. If they call, I take that call. And that was my way of letting them know there is nothing more important to me when they call. And it's very interesting anecdotal story. I can tell you that I was running a public company. Company was worth very, highly valued. I am at Goldman Sachs conference presenting in front of 5,000 investors. And my phone rang. And I said, it's my son, I have to take the call. It was a short call. And I said, I promised him that I'll always take his call. And I did. Call lasted no more than 15, 20 seconds. Stock moved up by $5 billion. They say, here is a man who makes a promise and keeps the promise and didn't give a shit what we thought. He didn't care what we thought. He did what he said he was going to do. And that's a character that they invested in. And my point is, in terms of children, it is simply about letting them know what makes you proud of them. And they will tell you whatever, but they remember what makes you proud of them. And that's what I told them when they were young. Go do something that will change the lives of millions of people. And he told me, whatever, Dad. And then he went on to start the Kairos Society because he knew, he said, Dad, you asked me to do that, I'm doing it. And that's my point. So it's just that simple. So coming out of poverty is family. Somebody who can put the family together or create the community together. That is really the way out of poverty and education. And obviously, believing. Belief is such a strong thing. When you believe you can, you will. You have to believe it's possible. Dream so big that people think you're crazy and never be afraid to fail. You only fail when you give up. Everything else is just a pivot. You pivot. You never fail. You only fail when you give up.
For sure, go in the middle first. That's fine.
Who's that?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay. Naveen, thanks for being here. Just 3 questions. They're short. First one is, how have you found clarity to how to reach your goals? Now, have you tried meditation? I know you mentioned researching knowledge and whatnot. Second question is, what's stopping you from calling Mark Zuckerberg and just telling him about your project? And can you help me with the marketing? I'm sure might be willing to help. And lastly, how is our privacy protected with Viome? What's stopping it? So, I don't think you would do it, but you from selling that information to someone to monetize it.
Of course. The first question in terms of finding clarity. So there is no doubt that meditation will help. And to me, it is my clarity comes from the thought that a strong belief in what I'm doing and a strong belief that this problem needs to be solved. It also comes from the fact that I'm singularly focused on the problem. I am so laser focused. Sometimes my wife will tell me that I can't even see things around me that are happening because the world around me doesn't exist when I'm focused. When I'm here, nothing around me matters to me than what I'm doing right now. Living every minute of it as if it's my last minute. I never worry about what happened, could have happened, should have happened, would have happened. I never worry about what will happen. It doesn't matter. I simply focus on what I need to do right now and hope that will change the trajectory of the future. Second question you asked me was about calling Mark Zuckerberg. And that,
Jeff.
So interesting thing is, first of all, I just don't have it in me to ask him for something yet. And I probably will if I meet him sometime, I will. It so happened his sister used to work for my son for a long time. So yes, I can always get to him. But if you do know him, let him know that I need help. Third thing is on privacy. So first thing is, the first thing, we always keep all the personally identifiable data from the data. Second thing is the thing we collect is really a snapshot of what is happening. Unlike a DNA, that from the time you're born to time you die, you have same DNA. It is a snapshot of what's happening inside your gut. even if someone to beat the shit out of you, by the time they get the shit, it will be completely different from what I saw. So they will still won't know it's the same person, right? So it's, I mean, in all seriousness, I mean, we don't have any desire to sell the data because we're not trying to figure out how to optimize the most amount of money. If I was trying to optimize the thing, I would sell that for $1,000 right now instead of, you know, the at cost that we can.
All right, let's go. Yeah. Over here.
Yeah, so I really resonate with when you mentioned about education being a way out of poverty. You know, I haven't been in poverty myself, but I've seen a lot of it. I've done disaster relief work before and other things, and I've seen, you know, where education was the way out of poverty for people. But one thing that always bogs me down is in the world of poverty, there's also this resource, that time that people just don't have. I've seen children, you know, who need to work on the farms day in and day out. They can't go to school because their, you know, families need to eat. I've seen, you know, people who are, you know, poverty in America, they need to work on weekends and nights. They need to work 2 jobs, 3 jobs. They don't have time to read books and learn. What are your thoughts on how we can give time to these people anyway?
So
Great question.
But, you know, first of all of those things are true. So none of the things I'm going to take away. But the good thing is that technology is becoming so powerful that today you can learn things while you're working, right? So in some sense, a lot of gamification and the stuff that is done on the devices that cost a few dollars now, right? So you can buy a Android tablets for under $10 now, right? And people are able to share them in villages. People will be able to hear the lessons, right? So one of the things that Alan was referring to is that there is a project that XPRIZE has. It's a complete literacy project. That means from someone who is completely illiterate, who has never seen anything, to be able to get to read, write, and math in under 18 months. And that is project now being tested in 18 different villages in Africa. So I really believe that, you know, the proliferation of cell phones and devices are happening so fast that these are the devices that will really become the mechanism for education, and I think it's changing. So I hope it comes faster, and even the fact that now you're able to have broadcast, that means it's no reason you couldn't broadcast the information or lecture while they are working on the fields. Right. So I really hope that over time those things will change. But the interesting thing is, for the first time, that we're no longer just the consumer of information, but we are also the producer of ideas, and those producer of ideas are sharing those ideas, right? So an idea in a village in Africa can be shared for a person in a village in India. That was never possible before. So in some sense, the ideas are spreading faster and faster, and knowledge is spreading faster and faster. So we believe these problems will get solved. And the only other thing I can possibly add to this is that even the definition of poverty is changing. Even today, I would argue the poorest person has more resources than the richest person had 100 years ago. So whatever that means, right? And the fact that as we are looking at the world with the exponential technologies, many of the things that we used to have value will be demonetized. That means you don't have to anymore work for food or water or shelter, because all those things will be taken care of, because they will be literally free.
All right. What a really powerful Q&A session, Naveen.
Thank you.
Yeah. And just, I really am, it's amazing to learn more about who you are and why you're doing what you're doing, and how you're inspiring people to take those next big steps, those risks, those moonshots, and do it from a perspective of bringing utility and bringing value to the world.
Well, thank you for giving me your time, because I know it's valuable to you. You could be doing n number of things, but the fact you chose to give me your time, I thank you for it. And I hope I was able to give you something that you could possibly say that was worth your time. But if you think of anything, just know you can reach out to me anytime. And if there is anything I can do to help you, you have my heart and soul. Thank you. Yeah.
Sure. Very quick, please.
Ambition. How do we, I get frustrated sometimes because, right, like we have this one life and I wake up every day and I'm like, let's go. There's important shit we have to get done. But how do we teach people drive and ambition and hunger? Like why isn't everyone waking up in this way of like, holy fucking shit, it's like, we have one life. Why aren't we trying to solve real problems? Why are we building apps that are just like games? Like, how do we teach that?
So first thing is, change the environment you live in. In my world, if you're not in that world of wake up in the morning, and by the way, I tell that to every single person who works for me, I always tell them, when you wake up in the morning and you don't jump out, call me. I promise you, I will find you a job that pays as much or more, and you have that on me, that I will find you a job that you get excited about to jump out of the bed. If this is not for you, that's totally fine. So surround yourself with people who are just as passionate and create a community of people that essentially will make you better. When you surround yourself with people that are bringing you down, then you're going to always be struggling because they suck the energy out of you. You want to be around people that when you wake up at 4 and say, you know what, did I tell you what I did at 3:30? Right? And that's really the kind of people you want to surround yourself with. So all I say is, go out and kick some ass and have some fun. Well, thank you very much again, and I hope let's have some fun, and we'll be together. Hopefully, we'll get to continue to have this dialogue.
And stick around and network with each other after the event for a little while. There's still some more drinks and conversation to be had. I want to thank everybody for coming out. Thank you for your support.
And thank you, WorkWise, if the person is still listening.
Yes, Richard's still in the back.
Thank you.
Thank you, WorkWise, for hosting us. Naveen, for coming out. This has been a huge pleasure.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And yes, and thank you guys for coming out. Thank you. Couple quick things. If you want to come, we have an Agora that's happening. It's our first Agora. This is just it's a way to connect the dots. We have so many brilliant people that are building the future in different disciplines, and what better way to figure out how they can work together than to host an amazing event here at WorkWise on September 20th, on Thursday, where we're going to have all those different disciplines here for a fun evening of networking. Then on the 28th, we're going to be hosting a Women in Alliance event here. So we're going to have a couple very powerful women that are building futures here joining us on stage and talking about what is going on in the world and what they're working on. So check us out. All that information can be found at simulationseries.com. And lastly, just go build the future. Much love, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.